Welcome back to another week of Muskies on Tap. I am your host, Gus Max, and there's a little extra pep in the step this morning because Max and I are prepping for the PMTT at Vermilion, and we are just super stoked to get there. And by the time this comes out, we'll already be there pre-fishing. We'll talk about that, but anyways, before I keep going, let me introduce one of the other co-hosts on tonight, and that is Max Manti. How are you doing tonight, Max?
I'm feeling great, Gus. Whenever everyone is listening to this, we will be in northern Minnesota, hopefully finding some sort of pattern and success up there on Vermilion. A little intimidating, heading out onto a 40,000 acre lake, kind of blind, if you will, but also got a pep in my step here tonight. We just got a great interview done with Alex McLean from McLean Muskies. Really excited for you guys to hear that. I think we covered a lot of really interesting information. Definitely kind of flushing out the dichotomy between Minnesota and Wisconsin fisheries, and kind of got to get taken to school, if you will, on some of the Minnesota stuff. So that was all really interesting. Felt like we could have talked to him forever. So really excited for you guys to all hear that. But yeah, excited to also have our other member back on. Gus, I'm sure you should introduce him, but it's nice to see his shining face again. I heard he had a pretty successful weekend, got some insider information that he was mixing it up at the bar last night pretty good. So not sure that's probably pod worthy news, but yeah, it's good to see Brian again on the screen.
Yeah, good to be here. Good to be back after a brief hiatus last week. I haven't been fishing a whole lot. Haven't had pretty busy schedule. Gonna be moving into a new place in the next few weeks. But yeah, just spent today nursing a little hangover and getting my hopes up again for Rory McIlroy. And once again, a little 8-footer slips out on hole 16, out he goes. So good solo second, pat on his back, and on to next week.
Nothing makes me happier than envisioning a hungover Brian on his couch just watching Rory McIlroy lose.
Miss putt after miss putt, yeah.
Brian, where are you moving to?
Down to Kahana.
So you're no longer a Green Bay resident. You're going to be a Cockanese.
A few more weeks. I'm a Green Bay resident. Got the Packer preseason game next weekend, which will be fun, and then packing up pretty much right after that. So going to be a shitty 2 weeks of moving. There's nothing worse than moving, but it's a little bit bigger place. So it'll be nice in the long run.
Yeah, big things ahead for a young Brian. All right, Gus, before we dive into this awesome interview with Alex McLean, do you want to just touch on a quick Northwoods update before we get into the interview? And then after the interview, we'll talk a little bit more PMTT prep.
Yeah, for sure. Right now it's still kind of going steady with the patterns. We've been finally seeing some pretty up and down temperature swings. Before it was hot, and it luckily never got too hot up here. At least the bodies of water that I was on stayed in the good temperatures, and which resulted in amazing, bucktail peak bites and, peak moons, and then a lot of rubber patterns, but we got some cold fronts recently, and some of the ticket sealers were shallow weighted rubber and Suix. So this past week, I think I just say it quickly during our interview with Alex McLean, but got to fish some new bodies of water and actually got to fish with 2 listeners of the podcast. So that was really cool. Got to meet some of the listeners that I've been messaging with in person, and had a blast sharing the boat, learned new things as always with new anglers. But yeah, one of the days was only Suics, and then got a bunch of action at night. I can't remember which day, but I think there's another front coming in the next day. So at night we got action from blades and top waters. So like it totally changed throughout that day. As we've been seeing, like it's gonna change through the day. I'm watching if it's really sunny and hot and windy, like we've been seeing some pretty good rubber bites. But if you start feeling that like bitter coldness in the air, those fish have become a little more lockjaw, and you got to do a little more searching and a little bit more grinding. And that's kind of when like a dive and rise or a crankbait's going to shine. And that's pretty much been it. But I think the highlight of the week was Max already told you this,
Yeah,
but our
I
father
did.
he got his largest casting muskie, and it was a second ever ripping rubber. He's caught him on swimming dogs.
Jeez.
And but when I say second fish ripping rubber, he literally caught his first two the same day. He caught about like a 32, 33 incher. I don't know, it didn't measure, but that was awesome. Way out in the cast, had a great hook set. And then he caught a 43 and a quarter. And these are both on shallow running Medusas. So it had like that extra hang. And that day in particular, I was moving them on larger rubber, but they're just looking at it. They're still very interested, but I think it was just that little smaller and slower presentation that did it. So
Is he
definitely
done with the
congrats to
blades?
him.
Is he done with the
He's
blades now? He's on to
I
rubber?
think he's hooked. He's hooked. So what he told me is that he is 2 for 2 on hookup and landing fish, ripping rubber. So he's going to retire so that
Going to retire.
he doesn't retire from ripping rubber. He's not going to move
Oh.
into the percentage. He's not going to move into the percentage that I don't even want to know what we're at with, hits to
Yeah,
landing
our
fish.
excuse to retire from rubber is just the back pain and sore shoulders. So if he's going for the perfect percentage, I don't blame him.
Oh yeah. There was one day where I think I knew fish would have eaten rubber in a certain way, and I was fishing solo on a new lake, and my shoulder hurt so bad. I don't know why. I ended up just having to drive around and or throw. I couldn't even throw blades. That was a tough day. But it was juicy weather, and I knew something could have happened, but there's not enough sticks in the boat, and I was that day, for example, I was so like desperate and trying to get like a big bite that I was trolling really shallow with dozer blades in front of a pounder.
Jeez.
So I was trying to get just the biggest reaction strike. Spoiler alert, it did not work, but I only gave it about 45 minutes. So
Yeah, the old college try. It's about all
yep,
I need for
exactly.
trolling.
Yeah, I don't blame you. It's not really the tactic that we like to use in the midsummer. Plus it's from what we know as musky anglers, it's never good to bring up fish from deep, and trolling shallow, it's like you might as well just cast.
Did
So
you have the pounder and the prop wash though?
oh, it was in the prop wash. I mean, I had that thing
Yeah.
just dangling there. I could feel those blades. I mean, it looked with the blades in front of a pounder going 4.5 miles an hour. It looked like the rod was going to snap in half. But other than that, I don't know what would happen if something actually took a nibble.
Yeah, that'd be a good adrenaline rush, knowing that your pounder with a blade just went off in the
Ooh,
prop
I
wash.
was, yeah, yeah, I was waiting for it. But anyways, yeah, that was the highlight. Dad's highlight of that day, catching those fish on ripping Medusas. So that was really cool to see. Talking water temps real quick. This morning I got out. This is Sunday the 13th, and immediate temperatures in the morning got down to like 69 to 70 degrees. But prior to that, we're still in the mid 70s. So it is dropping, and there should be some shallow water fish pushing in. And I think just for going forward, it's looking like we're gonna get some heat going again, and I think it's going to keep these fish just moving in and out and in and out, and you just got to be mobile yourself. So especially if you're in an area that you know where fish are, just fish it from different angles. Like if say it's a weedy bay and the weeds go up to 7 feet, fish the outer edge, fish the inner edge, plop your boat right in the middle, cast both sides if you got multiple people, and maybe do one cast length off if it gets really hot and sunny. I mean, usually when it's really hot and sunny, I actually sometimes push shallower and try and get those fish out of the thick cover. But yeah, definitely don't be afraid to switch up presentations. It still seems that the larger presentations are best, but if it gets tough and you're not moving anything on large presentations, I would first downsize and stick with that same presentation. Don't do anything like just completely switch gears yet. I mean, if it's really tough, that's when I'll drag out the jerk baits and the crank baits and dive and rise and all that good stuff. So yeah, that's the quick report in the Northwoods, and I don't want to keep anybody too much longer. I think we should just roll the interview with Alex McLean from McLean Muskies.
Fire it up.
Fire up.
Rev up those fryers.
This is like the most Minnesota we're probably going to get. We got Alex McLean on and wrote a clip and Vermilion talk. So we're diving in here, Minnesota fishing. All right, tonight we have a very special guest on, Alex McLean from McLean Muskies. Alex, how you doing this evening? Thanks for coming on. We really appreciate it.
Doing great, fellas. Thanks for having me. Excited.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, for all those listeners of ours from the Wisconsin and other areas that aren't Minnesota that aren't familiar with you, you want to just give like a quick background on, I don't know, who you are, how long you've been fishing for, what got you into muskie fishing, and kind of how your season's been going, so far as well.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, my name's Alex McLean. I've been muskie fishing Minnesota this is now my 20th season, so 20 years, long time. My father got me into fishing in general at that time, and muskies. So we would do family vacations up on Cass Lake in northern Minnesota here every year. I did that for about 15 years straight. And then one year I was out with a couple buddies and we were just throwing little daredevils, like just kind of clueless anglers back then.
Sure.
No internet, there's nothing like that going on. And I had a big, I don't know, I'd probably estimate it to be like a 4-footer or so muskie. Chased my daredevil into the boat, old Starcraft, little 14-foot Johner back in the day. And
nice.
It just kind of stayed there by the boat as I was dangling the bait because we had no idea what a figure 8 was. And
yeah, it's kind of like Brian still.
Yeah. And that's
now we got evidence out there. It's not true.
And we recast it a bunch of times, and it kept coming back to the boat. And at that time we were like, this is a muskie. This is incredible. And that moment sealed the deal for the next 20 years here. I went out that same night to the local tackle store with my dad. I bought I think it was like an OG Abu 6500 with some 50-pound braid and a little. It might even have. I can't even remember, but it might have even been an ugly stick or something. And that's from that moment on. When I got home from that family, we didn't catch any, but it was still a learning process. From that moment on, we got back on the internet and old dial-up jumped onto the Muskie First forums and dove in from there. Yeah. And grew up in the Twin Cities. So I've done a majority of my life's fishing down in the cities there. Moved up to Alexandria area, Minnesota for about 6 years. And love the fishing out there. I miss that area of the state all the time. I love it out there. But then obviously no complaints. 4 years ago, I moved up here to Bemidji, Minnesota, which is like, I don't know, kind of in my opinion, the mecca of Minnesota muskie fishing, area, I guess. And I love it. Fishing's great. I work full time, but I do a little part-time guiding, kind of under the radar. I don't really go out on social media and announce all that, but it leaves, I get so many messages about, do you guide, can you do guide trips, stuff like that, it gives me the ability to sort of just kind of keep it selective. And, I get that question a lot. Do you want to guide full time? And the answer has always been no, because I've got friends that do it, and it just kind of takes away the passion a little bit. And the less time I'm on the water, then the more I look forward to it each time out. So
yeah, I can relate to that. I mean, I there's a lot to unpack there. And I know I'm excited to get into all that, especially, hearing that you've been fishing Minnesota waters for 20 years. I mean, I'm very excited to kind of hear you kind of talk about the progression of Minnesota, the fishery in Minnesota. But I do want to start off with a pretty dumb question, and it could be as simple as a yes or no. But us Wisconsinites over here, I think through social media and everything, the only thing we see about Minnesota fishing is every fish seems to be over 50 inches, and they all seem to be very easy to catch. I'm assuming that that's not the case, but is it?
So I'm gonna sort of reject that almost in full.
I'm sure it's
easy to catch. So I mean, I've done some Wisconsin fishing and such, and I again grew up in the Twin Cities. We've got Leech Lake stocked fish. We also have some natural strain Mississippi and spotted fish up in northern Minnesota. In terms of ease of catching, I don't think it's any different than Wisconsin. If anything, I think that numbers wise, you can go out on Wisconsin on any given day and probably catch more fish. I mean, we do put our time in, and like anywhere, time on the water, it is equivalent to more muskies in the boat. But catch rates, I actually think that outside of Minnesota, in other states, you'd find more success these days anyway. Back in the so-called glory days, early 2000s, mid 2000s, when the DNR was stocking like kind of an exponential amount of fish compared to today, and with a tenth of the fishing pressure, it was a lot different. Back then, a 5 to 7 fish day wasn't really uncommon, when we were in the early days of it. But nowadays, you have to go out and work for them. A good one fish, 2 fish day is a great day for anyone now in Minnesota. So
yeah, I know. I asked that completely in jest, because the one time we did fish Minnesota with Gus, Brian, and I, we got our butts absolutely handed to us. So
yeah,
I know, it's musky fishing, it's tough, and I think there are differences that we're excited to kind of learn more about, because even though I'm living in Minneapolis now, I don't really fish too much in Minnesota. I'm mostly in northern Wisconsin, so excited to kind of unpack that. So you said you fished a little bit in Wisconsin. Where did you spend some time?
So I always fished. I mean, I was in the Twin Cities, I always fished those southern areas, just the St. Croix River, Bone Lake, Deer Lake, Wabagassa, those area lakes out there. Never really took the time to go out east farther, because I was 10 minutes from White Bear, Forest Lake, down in the cities there. So that's where I kind of grew up and spent 80% of my time. So, and then, I mean, I was a little bit late to even though I started muskie fishing back in the early glory days, like I was still a little bit late to learning everything and getting out to the, I never got to fish like Mille Lacs during the premier days or anything like that. To me, it was just all cast. Like, that's just where my family went on vacation every year. I was younger, high school student. I didn't really have the financial means to travel all around and do all that at that time. But yeah.
So I when you mentioned Mille Lacs, I'm always curious about it. I've driven around it before. I've never been out on it, and it's obviously a giant body of water. Have you spent a lot of time out there? Do you kind of stay away from it now?
Nowadays I stay away from it mostly. I'll fish the early weeks of the season during opener, when the fish are generally shallow, some in the bays and such, and we'll target those fish, because that's always a good time. It's kind of a tradition for us to go there for opener with a bunch of friends, and we always get cabins and such. But after that, once the fish on Mille Lacs disperse into that vast open water, it becomes, quite the challenge, to where, one fish in a week for some people would be like a successful week out there. The numbers have, what happened to the lake is just an overall shame. Like it was just so poorly mismanaged by the Minnesota DNR, as well as a lot of, mishandling and angler abuse and such like that. But for the most part, it just they let up on stocking, and they just wanted to create a trophy fishery, which in a sense they've done successfully. But the lake is just, it's the worst decline in any fishery I've ever
How
heard of
fast
or
was that
witnessed.
decline? And did they cut the stock numbers in half, or what did that
Yeah,
look
yeah.
like?
I mean, it's yeah, they probably cut it more than in a half. I wanted to say there was a period where they were only stocking like 300 or 600 fish, like by yearly or something like that, in a 100,000 plus
That's
acre lake. I mean,
ridiculous.
and the numbers, and then on top of that, you've got like, you get these year classes of bay fish out there that just get wiped out. So like we went through a period for 4 or 5 years there where the bait fish just got wiped out. And then all the walleyes and the smallmouth out there, they were just like starving. So like any stocked fingerling fish of any species that are going in there are just getting eaten up right away. But we're as of the last 2-3 years here, we're starting to see like a kind of a return in the bait fish population, especially the perch. And that's actually seemingly helping the muskies as of late. So I don't know yet, but it seems like there's a little bit of a comeback maybe starting, but I don't know. It's still going to be years till you can go out there and like feel confident each time out. But
Do you know what happened to the bait fish to kill them off for like that 5 year stretch, or?
I I don't have the biological answers for that. I don't know. I mean, over harvesting, you know, netting, spawn netting, things like that. It all has an effect on it and kind of goes in cycles. But if I was going to direct somebody to come and target their first Minnesota Muskie, that would be the last lake I would point them to.
So something I really wanted to talk to you about, because it's fascinating to me, the difference, like, Minnesota and Wisconsin were neighboring states, yet the lakes themselves are so different that hold muskies. I mean, like you're talking about Mille Lacs and Cass Lake that, I'm sure you're up in that area fishing there. And it's like you could fit, probably every single lake that we fish in a given summer into those single bodies of water that you fish. So like for us, stepping onto a Cass Lake or a Mille Lacs would be probably extremely intimidating, just because, they're so much bigger than the lakes we're typically fishing. So like when you're, getting to know those bodies of water, I mean, is it musky fishing is musky fishing? Like, are you just doing, what we probably do at a bigger scale? I mean, are you, spending more time out in the open water with these fish, or do they set up on structure like a typical Wisconsin lake, or is it just very seasonal there? I mean, it seems obviously you've dialed it in pretty well, per your Instagram pictures and videos and whatnot.
Yeah. So, overall in Minnesota, I would like, obviously, and you can figure this out real quick being out here, just like fish density per acre compared to Wisconsin is honestly, I believe it's drastically less. Like, especially in those smaller Wisconsin lakes, I think that you can find,
Sure.
maybe a fish per acre, fish per 2 acre, 3 acre, something like that. In Minnesota, we're talking like these bigger lakes, Cass, Vermilion, Mille Lacs, Leech, Bemidji, like all those types of lakes. These are huge basin lakes, and they're mostly like lower density.
Mm-hmm.
And that's part due, in fact, to the low stocking and fishing pressure. But yeah, breaking down a lake isn't. I mean, it's going to function pretty much the same. I mean, nowadays, with side imaging and even live scope and all the modern electronics that we have, locating muskies has become pretty. I don't want to say easy, but it takes a lot of pressure off of the everyday angler nowadays. But yeah, each lake though, from an intimidation factor from somebody who's never fished it, yeah, I can 100% see that, because each lake is like they have their very like specific individual processes. Like you can go to one lake and the fish during a certain point time of the year, they're just going to be relating to open water. And then on a lake 5 minutes down the road, we're going to find them up in the reeds for certain reasons, certain, the forage and everything like that. So it is very lake to lake basis. And it does take time. Like, you can't just come here on a random weekend and expect to find success. It's difficult. It's really difficult until you understand how each lake flows, why the fish are where they are each time of year. And then when you're fishing each spot that these fish are on, as strange as it sounds, there are certain ways to break down that individual spot and certain angles that you almost have to cast at these fish. We call them eater angles and stuff in order to get these bites. So it takes a long time. And like I said, yeah, for somebody to come here and expect to find like great success on just on a weekend trip, that's tough. That's going to be tough for anybody.
Well, was there a moment for you when like it clicked then? I mean, like you're saying, you're talking about the intimidation factor and you've been doing this for a long time. I mean, can you pinpoint a time where all of a sudden because like I think I can kind of, looking back on Gus, Brian, and I's time muskie fishing, over the past handful of years now, like I can probably start to go back and pinpoint certain weekends or, seasons, like parts of seasons where things started to really click for us. But was there like a certain time where things just started to kind of make more sense for you and like you just started to really, get on them in a sense?
Yeah. And I mean, I think that it has sort of progressed along with the advancements in technology, our equipment. Back when I first started, like my first like serious muskie rod was a 6.3 Compre. And we were like, we bought this at a show, and it was like the premier rod of that show.
Yeah.
And it's just like nowadays we've advanced everything to 10-foot 6 extra heavy rods to everything's advanced so much, side imaging, like I said, live scope, everything, to where all the tools are in our hands now to find the success. But in terms of like myself, really, I think started probably between 2015 and 2017 is when, I had been hitting all these different Minnesota lakes, traveling every weekend, learning, breaking everything down. And those are the years to me when it really is like, okay, now I've got a handle on a lot of different lakes across the state, fished them throughout different time periods of the year to understand their movements and, where they are, why they are that time of year. And since then, it seems to really just have gotten better each year. Like, not kind of almost exponentially. It's really shocking. Like this year in particular has been unbelievable. Like, we're doing so well. I could go into it for a long time. I mean, we're just finding success every time out almost.
Do you think it's a learning curve thing, or do you think it's the bodies of water that are just being able to kick out more fish through, good stocking, all that stuff? Or do you think it's just you personally, finally, like, not finally, but like really just having things click? I mean, I know for us, like, I don't think the fishing has changed at all over the past year, but I know we've made a huge leap, from last year to this year. And that same thing happened 2 years ago, from 2 years ago to last year. And it just all came from time on the water and building that Rolodex of like really grinding and learning spots, learning lakes, learning what times a year to hit certain lakes. Like, that's probably been our biggest learning curve, is like, this month, this lake fires up, next month, we know there's going to be a great bite on these bodies of water. So do you think it's just been like a more of a personal growth thing this year, or just it is what it is?
I mean, I think I think you were right when you said, there's still a learning curve. Like I said, like the best thing somebody can do to find success is just continually put time in on the water, and on the same waters over and over again as time progresses throughout the season to learn, and you can learn nowadays. You can also learn so much, with, like I said, with the electronics, that plays a huge factor in everything. But like, yeah, time on the water, over and over and over. That's everyone's best bet. I mean, it just is. And that doesn't matter where you live, where you are. If anyone can learn to master their local lakes, good enough to, to be a guide or whatever. You know what I mean? But yeah.
So going off kind of what you've learned with all these different lakes, especially the bigger ones, I guess if you can just kind of give like an overview for us and for everybody else who doesn't fish Minnesota as to kind of like the pattern changes with these muskie throughout the course of the entire year. Because from what we know, you guys have a big open water bite, middle of the summer. You can get into that too, but we don't really have that over here. I think a lot of it's due to our smaller lake size, but if you can just kind of detail how these fish move around throughout the course of the year.
Yeah, so generally on opener, especially in the northern half of Minnesota, at least for the past 5 to 10 years, we've had cooler openers. Except for maybe like 4 years ago, we had that one opener which was like 100 degrees. But in general, our water temps have been hovering around 60 or so on opener, which is going to kind of make the fish just post spawn, where your females are just sliding out to that first break, and then within a week sliding out to the open water after that. But right away on opener, we're finding fish in shallow water, big fish, all the males, some even that are still pre-spawn and coming in from the open water. And then once they spawn, then around end of June we start to see the big Minnesota open water push, and that's where all of your females, your big, the big females are going to move out there earlier, like almost immediately post spawn or within a week or so of spawn. And then your males will slide out after. But usually around the end of June was like it's like the full on open water push where we're going out into the basin with these big baits. We're trying to use baits that are resembling Minnesota sized ciscos and or whitefish. That's what these fish are eating and recovering. So for at least a solid month there, we're out throwing like your pounders, your big medusas, beaver baits, big baits. And that's what we're finding success on. And, it really, when you're out there, it just kind of comes down to locating them. I mean, they really do. It's really intimidating if you haven't done it, but they really truly do just roam the open basin, scattered. They don't generally bunch up much. They find the bait, find the fish. That's kind of how it is. And we're out just chucking the middle of the open abyss, and generally you're feeding fish, and really the only fish you ever want to target for mortality reasons is in the top 15 feet of the water column.
Right.
So we're always keeping our baits up, and when they're ready to eat, they eat. They're muskies.
So I don't want to labor on it too much because I feel like it's kind of been beaten to a pulp with the technology stuff. But I listened to your episode when you were on with the muskie hunks, and you guys talked a lot about live scoping, and I did want to touch on it just because I feel like there is a difference between how it's used from Minnesota to Wisconsin, because you're talking about this open water bite, and like we have a live scope. I would say we probably use it, I don't know, the ROI on it's pretty low right now outside of ice fishing, because like when we go muskie fish, like we fish weeds, shallow rocks, like we don't do too much open water. There's really not fish to sharpshoot in a sense in Wisconsin. I mean, the whole controversy, hilariously enough, started in Wisconsin with the PMTT at Eagle River. And like, I've talked about this, but Gus and I we talked about it after. It's like the stars aligned perfectly for that weekend. There was a massive bug hatch, all those fish kicked out into open water. That was a very rare scenario where you just had all these like very readily accessible muskies that were wanting to eat for a course of 48 hours, and those guys capitalized on it. And like I think I said on another podcast, like they catch 4 or 5 fish, no one says shit. The fact that they caught 12 or 11 or whatever it was the whole reason why you really threw gasoline on that fire. But I think with the Minnesota open water thing, it's like a lot of the people we see, either guides or on YouTube or whatever, like live scope seems to be pretty predominant in their boat. And I know you've, I don't know if you've gone off this at all or like gotten one, but last time I heard you were kind of the OG in the sense where you weren't using live scope. You're just kind of, like you have the hashtag no scope. you know, all
Yeah,
that stuff. So is that still kind of your game plan, not
so
using it?
we've that's a huge conversation here. So I've loosened up a little bit. Anyone that knows me or I guess my group of closer muskie friends knows that we're uh, predominantly against any more advancements in technology at this point. And I think that overall the cons do outweigh the pros, but I have loosened up on it a little bit. I did get a live scope,
Okay.
unit. I have gone out and dabbled with it in all the ways that you can. And I've learned to say that I haven't learned anything from it would be just a lie, because I have. You learn about these fish behaviors, their movements out there in the open water, where they are and why they're there. It's also really it's a fun tool. Like it is cool to see a fish come in. It is cool to see a fish eat, and to see their behavior once they do. Also the way they're affected by it. They're definitely affected by it.
I agree.
And it's almost
100%.
impossible for open water, to catch open water muskies in the figure eight. It doesn't happen very often. If you're pinging them with a scope, like they kind of halt hard at that 40-foot range is kind of what we discovered. But I have used it. I kind of quit using it there in June, just because it was kind of like I mean, there's so many opinions and emotions on what I think about it that it's I don't know where to even start. I guess honestly it's too effective. It's too easy, and that's just the cold hard truth. When open water fishing in Minnesota, takes anyone who's got enough money can load their boat with enough live scopes to go out there and crush fish. I mean, it's so easy. To me, like I can't even sit here and like break down any form of like skill or art or anything that it takes to use it out in the open water, because there isn't. You just can see them, and I can put a cast on top of their head with any bait, anywhere. I've got a 360-degree view covering all the water column 100 feet out from my boat in every way. So like if you're using a live scope in the open water, like you can see every bait fish, it's so easy. And with that reason, it's too much pressure. It's too much pressure on the fish. Like we're able to go out. Like I said, I haven't used the live scope since June, but we went out and experimented for a couple of weeks with it there, and it was kind of a joke. We were having 10 fish days, 10 fish plus days, more than one, and just hammering every fish in sight. And they're not as smart for whatever reason. Muskies are more apt to bite in the open water. They just are. They're not as smart. They're there pretty much primarily to feed, in my opinion. And it's too easy to be considered any form of skill that should be allowed, at least in a tournament aspect. I don't care if at this point, if you're a regular weekender who wants to go out and use live scope. I mean, it is what it is. This is the world we live in now. I mean, probably next year, the year after, 360 live scope's going to be out, and everything's just going to keep on advancing as time progresses. It's just how it is. So, we adapt. I adapted. I got it. It's tough to explain to someone. So I've had like so much heat from different directions for my opinions on things. It's just kind of like originally, like I was getting so much crap from the guys that had a live scope, like, oh, you don't know what you're talking about, blah 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 blah. And then all, like a majority of the people out there, in my opinion, just are against it. And even all the guides I talk to and everything like that, they're against it. Do we have one, for client purposes, finding fish, etc.? Sure, yeah. I mean, it's that advanced, it's that useful, it's worth your investment if ultimately your goal is to just like put muskies in the net. But it has taken away a little bit from the the original thrill, the purpose of muskie fishing in my eyes. Like, like the thrill of the unknown. That's what makes muskie fishing. When you're going out and breaking down a water and you get that bite that comes out of left field that catches you right in the corner of the 8, like there'll never be anything more thrilling than an unknown muskie bite.
Well, that's why you do it, right? I mean,
Yeah,
for that
that's
adrenaline
it.
rush,
That's
like that's it. That's
Yep.
like you want to bottle that, and that's the whole reason why you're out there is like you're spending hours upon hours. And I don't want to put words in your mouth at all, but like, I mean, I think something that we touched on prior, it's like figuring out these large bodies of water, or even our, Wisconsin lakes, like they take hours and years to learn, and you feel a little bit shortchanged. I'm sure as a Minnesota guy, if you saw somebody like, yeah, first day on Cass Lake, we caught 4 fish, and you'd be like, okay, and then you look at their boat and they have 2 or 3 units, and you know what they were doing, right? I mean, it's tough.
It's like a moral dilemma nowadays. It's really difficult. So like I have every day I go out, I have the choice. Okay, do I want to go sweat my ass off and grind it out and fish these spots I'm confident in, fish these spots I know, break them down and catch a fish or 2, or do I just want to go out there with a live scope and catch 10 that night? You know what I mean? It's like it's a tough dilemma, but I've late as of the last month and a half here, I've stuck with it, and we've done our grinding and our true fishing, and it feels way more rewarding. It does. Every fish caught without live scope, hands down, in my personal opinion, just feels way more rewarding in every way. It just does.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone's entitled to their own opinions, of course, and but and then nowadays, I mean, another thing that when you're out there, you're grinding and you're catching fish, and then you see here's a new guy who's fished muskies for a year, is out driving around, with their gas engine on and 4 scopes hanging over the side and just sniping them, and it's just like that's kind of cringeworthy. It's like, wow. So not. I mean, it's hard to, you cannot deny, and it is very truthful to say that literally anyone with enough money and enough electronic power on their boat can just go out and flat out snipe muskies now if their goal is to just throw stuff on social media and put fish inside their net. I mean, it's easy, but that's not what muskie fishing is about. It never has been. And there's a lot of people out there, a lot of guides out there who, they're pretty upset about it. And but for professional reasons or so on and so forth, they are not expressing that as much as they feel it,
Yeah.
But really it's a big dilemma now, and it is, I mean, it is what it is. It's just the world we live in now. So
yeah, I mean, it's true. Like, it's just it's so funny to like think how far it's all come. I mean, I was reading Time on the Water this summer just for kicks, and like there's this one story that really stuck out to me, and I was telling Gus and Brian about it, where it was either a guide or just somebody that was out fishing, and they were literally dropping like a split shot on the bottom to kind of feel out where the rock bar was. And then they would take, floaters and tie whatever and ping, okay, here's where the rock bar starts and here's where it ends. And now I'm going to troll the edge of this rock bar back and forth, hand troll the rock bar back and forth all day. And that's something you could literally pull up, never been on the lake before, with all your stuff now, and like, just be like, oh, there's a rock bar, probably one of the 50 that are on any given lake that is, rock based or whatever. But like this guy literally had to take the time to figure out, okay, where does this rock bar start? Where does it end? I mean, there's something that's kind of cool and primal about doing it that way. I mean, and it's kind of the thing that you talked about where it's like that moral dilemma. Cause like, yeah, it's tough. I mean, it'd be cool to catch muskies with 0 electronics, going to a remote body of water with no cabins on it, no one telling you where to go fish, and then catching one. It feels more rewarding. I know, I can't agree more. It's like, it's just crazy to think how far, everything is advanced. And yeah, I've kind of wavered on the live scope thing. I mean, I think it's really cool. And like you said, you learn a lot Couldn't agree more. I mean, there's been times for us where it's almost been pivotal to like stay on spots because we know there's fish there via live scope, especially like in the late fall when like we're dragging suckers and we're on a certain spot and we see like 4 different fish come up. It's like, okay, we need to stay here because we know there's fish here. We would have never known though without live scope. We would have had no idea. We probably would have pulled up and moved to a different spot. I mean, that happened to us last fall where we caught a really nice fish solely because not sharpshooting it, but just using suckers and knowing that there were fish there, and we just stuck around until one finally decided to bite. But it is weird. I mean, I'd like to think that if things continue to advance, there might be a gut feeling amongst anglers where how far is too far and are we already there? It's probably the question.
100%. Yeah, I feel you right there. I mean, I personally think we're past it. I think live scope was like that kind of pushed the line too far. But like you said, like in the dynamic of the fish and their behavior is changing because of it and with it too. So it like guys who aren't moving up with these advancements in technologies, they're only going to struggle even more more and more every year without it, and I get like you were saying earlier too with the original guys, the time on the water, Bill Gardner and like, even like Dick Pearson, and like this is a conversation we had when we were up on Lake of the Woods last week, and like, nowadays, like these Lake Master maps have come so far. I mean, this is just so incredible. These guys used to come out here and just bring multiple lower units out on their boat, and just multiple motors because they knew that there's a rock bar. Let's put it on our physical map here, and then just go experiment over it. Like the groundbreakers of the sport are like they're just warriors. They truly made the sport what it is, and like same with like the original Muskies Inc. guys. The guys who are out there like promoting catch and release and kind of ingrain the fabric of what the sport is these days to what it is. Like there's no one that you can have more respect for overall than those guys who went out and were doing it and were catching all big fish, originally mapping lakes. Like it's just that's where it's at. I mean, that's nothing cooler than that in my opinion.
Yeah, it's crazy to think that. I mean, part of me, and it sounds like you are the same way, where there is part of me, especially in the northern Wisconsin, where you get a little bit nostalgic when you're up there. It's like, damn, this is kind of where, at least I'm talking about northern Wisconsin now, where it's like, these were some of the pioneers where they were literally going out to a lake and being like, are there muskies in here? Let's go find out. And they just go and grind and spend time. And, that's like how they got onto a good bite and like why guides were so, important back then, because it's like your average Joe from coming up from Chicago is going to have no idea that Lake X, off the dirt road in northern Wisconsin even has a muskie in it. Nonetheless, like where to even go and catch them. It's so different now. It's just crazy.
Yeah. I mean, with the new technology that we have, I mean, like I said, it's here to stay. It's only going to advance. I mean, the only things and the best things that we can do is just do our best to educate, to try to keep the resource as available and as decent as it is for like for everyone, like the common phrase, for generations to come. Like, to me, it's never been about the advancement in technology really that's bothered me. It's the treatment of the resource by people who are abusing it that's always just bothered me. And you can see that too. I mean, like I said, nowadays, like, you hear the phrase, "Oh, everyone's a guide," because with live scope, at least in the state of Minnesota, like anyone can just, like I said, anyone can go find success with it by just going out and sniping fish. It's just, but there's a lot of people, and there's some people that are doing it right now that are just have complete disregard for the muskies. And one thing you do learn over time is that warm water negatively affects muskie. It does. It's at least
right.
Especially in bigger. I think it's even more of an issue on bigger basin lakes. With a different, like huge ranges of pressure and thermocline in the water that can cause barotrauma to fish and things like that. Like going out into the open water, like in the middle of summer months when that water is 75 degrees or more, like catch these open water fish, like it's a danger to target them out there. Like like a lot of fish are dying. Like I was out on a lake a couple weeks ago, and one of these newer guides was out there, and they were driving around gas motors, sniping fish with Bondi baits straight out of 40 feet of water. And I drove. I mean, what do you expect to happen there? You know, and just complete disregard. I drove over, and the fish I watched them catch one, release it, drove over, picked it up, dead as a doornail. What can I do?
Sounds like you got to start taking some like MMA classes and meet them at the boat launch.
Oh, I mean, it's frustrating. It's frustrating. You know, it's like you can't educate some of these people, and you can try, you know, but they just don't listen. Some of them.
And that's where I think you hit the nail on the head, where if it's like, has technology gone too far? You know, anytime there's bad actors that have ample opportunity, it's tough, you know. And I think that's just where it is. Like if people use live scope for what it is and, you know, use it, I guess, in a morally right way, it's a great tool. Yep. But when the lines get crossed, and it's very easy to cross those lines, like there's no one's out there patrolling you. Like you just, you know, it's impossible to regulate that activity. Like if you're going to give somebody the opportunity to literally have a live heat mapping sonar on a screen, you know, and somebody really wants to catch a fish, like there's nobody sitting there stopping them from doing what you just said, you know, and that's where it gets tough.
100%. Yeah, I agree. I mean, like I said, I don't have any problem with the technology itself or the companies, you know, and there are certain things that I just absolutely love it for. Like you said, I love it. The concept, I haven't tried it yet since this is the first year I've owned live scope, but I'm excited to actually watch my sucker minnows with it. Like I think that'll be really cool.
It's so frustrating. It's so frustrating.
Yeah.
When you're
cool,
not
but
able
frustrating,
to oh my God. It's so when you're not able to actually do, you know, physically anything to get those fish to eat, and you're just sitting there watching them. I mean, so like I talked about that one story, you know, where we like stayed on spot. Gus and I literally fished this. I don't know, what would you call it, Gus? Like a rock reef connected to an island?
This one particular reef for 3.5 days straight. I think we fished, I don't know, 6 or 7 different spots, and we had live scopes with the suckers, and we never saw fish on a single other spot other than this one spot. And we figured there was 10 fish there, maybe more. So we're just like, we're going to sit here for 8 hours until fish eats. It took 3 days.
What's funny about that is the one fish that ate. So like, you know, day one, we're raising all these fish on suckers. And like, you know, once you start seeing them, like you can tell the size of the, you know, this is like late season in Wisconsin, where like we're fishing on one of the only bodies of water that's still open. Gus, you want to go in on this?
Oh, are you going to talk about how it was caught?
Yeah, because literally like we were raising fish after fish after fish, and like they would come up to the sucker, and we'd have the live scope on them, and we're like, oh, this one's gonna eat, because it would shoot off the bottom, you know, and circle it, go above it, go below it, go to the side, you could literally see the fin on the fish, right? And like you could tell these were huge fish, and like we just kept staying on it. Day 3 comes around, and we were like, we got to do something different, you know, whatever. I don't know what it is, like get these fish to eat. And so we finally had this one that came up and seemed to be intrigued. And Gus just is like, we're shutting everything off. So we shut off live scope. We shut off all of our electronics, trolling motor, everything. We don't say a single word. We're sitting there in complete silence. Me, Gus, and my dad. The sun is setting. I mean, you can't, it's like storybook shit.
It was full moon, moonrise to a T, like to the minute. Just like
on the minute
slowly.
And all of a sudden the bobber just goes boom, boom, boom. See ya. And then it was like game on. But it wasn't until we shut every single piece of electronic off on our boat. And this, I mean, we're not talking about sitting out there for 3 hours. Like this was 3.5 days on one single spot, knowing that there was going to be a big fish there. And it was, I mean, to this day, it was the fattest fish I've ever seen come out of a northern Wisconsin body of water in our boat. Obviously there's been other ones, but it was such a cool experience. So all of a sudden we're like, and the light bulb kind of clicked. We're like, did that Was that it? Did that make a difference? Like,
And I'll tell you that is very well possible and is very likely too. I mean, these fish, and it's especially you can learn more in the open water. You know, you can see their behaviors a little bit better, in my opinion. But they're aware. They're aware
Yeah.
of that, of the live scope transducer. They're aware of side imaging. I think they're much more aware of the ping from a live scope. For whatever reason, I don't know what it is, but they respond a lot more to that being in the water than they do side imaging. But
That's why the
I've done that. We've done
optimistic.
that too, and we found success. Find a group of fish, turn everything off, go back around on them,
go fishing.
coming in. You know, every
Hmm.
time almost.
Yeah.
So,
Wow, that's
Interesting.
interesting.
The optimistic side of me wants to believe the Muskies are on our side, and as more pressure with these live scopes starts happening over the next 5 years, that they're gonna become even more skittish to these sonars, and you might find them on the sonar, but they're gonna be bolting the other way from it. So that's the only thing that might save us in the Yanks. I don't think the technology is slowing down.
yep, yep. I agree. I mean, like I said, the fish adapt. One thing with Minnesota fish, you see it on like Lake Vermilion a lot, even like the fish are spending, because of the enormous amount of pressure, they're spending a lot more time in the open water, and they're spending a lot more time deeper in the open water. Like I've heard from a lot of people, oh well muskies, they don't even go down to 40 feet of water. Well, that's in these deep basin Minnesota lakes, these muskies are down in 40, 50, 60 plus feet of water
Jesus.
Damn. That's
all the
crazy.
time, which makes them even more susceptible to any, like if anyone were to make the awful choice to target them down there, they're not going to survive that, especially not in the warmer months.
No, going up 60 feet on a Bondi bait.
And that's how they're responding, to pressure too. It's like we're finding less and less fish moved up onto structure spots at certain times of the year, and they're acting strange. Like even earlier this year, like our general pattern after our open water, we call it the first wave, is when the fish make that collective push to structure, shallow water. It usually happens around the middle to the end of July period generally. And we look forward to that every year because, like, oh, here they come. Now that and usually when they make that first push to structure, they're really active, they're really bitey. Good time of year, good chance for big fish. But they're being strange. And this year we had certain lakes where fish wouldn't push up on the structure till just 2 weeks ago, and we had a couple lakes where the fish that were supposed to be in open water pushed up into the reeds in the end of June, like just wild behavior out of nowhere. And it's just super susceptible to pressure. And we've had to react to that and in our fishing tactics and to kind of follow along. And like one thing I see that a lot of you guys over there in central northern Wisconsin are doing is a lot of lake hopping. You've got a lot more lakes within close range than we do in Minnesota. But my primary boat partner is Tyler Schlobs. He's a good buddy of mine, and it's who I share my boat with most of the time. But we've done some strange things this year. We're trying some very abstract baits, doing a lot of different bait modifications, and we're doing a lot of lake hopping. Like even though like the lakes are half hour, 45 minutes from one another, we're still like there was a weekend just the other weekend where we fished 6 lakes in a day. And we're talking like 4 hours of driving in one day just to change things up, and it's working. We found huge success, just doing off the grid, off the wall things this year. So
that's
So what do
awesome.
you-
Yeah, I mean that hits home for us. Go ahead, Gus.
So what are you seeing in a lake that is making you want to like drive off of it? Say it's a lake that you know really well. Like what is, say, like a factor if it's going through moon and not seeing a fish, or going to your spot where you're like this time of year they're there and they're not? Like are those, like what are the things that you're looking for?
yeah, we have our milk runs, and I think it's just the general fish behavior. Like if we're going out, certain lakes, like if you're going out and you're marking fish, like that's actually not, it's hard to explain, but there's certain lakes where you go out and you mark fish and it's actually not a good thing. And that just promotes to us that they're not active because, in Minnesota lakes, when fish are actively feeding, like we generally find them in the same particular areas, even facing certain angles on certain spots. And we'll go out and fish our milk runs. And if they're just set up strange, not moving, nothing's happening during any of the phases, then that's just like all right, let's go, let's leave. And that's what we've been doing. Like if we, we'll do the runs, we'll look around. If things are just out of step a little bit, and it's just like, well, let's go find a lake where things are lined up as they're supposed to be, and it's been working that way for us. So generally, I mean, I don't think I fished a weekend without fishing at least 3 or 4 different lakes. So
That's really cool. I know Brian's ears are going to perk up a little bit here. You talked about changing some changing up some presentations, and we, feel free not to answer this. We can cut it. But what are some of those crazy mods you have been doing on some of your baits that have been, you talked about having to kind of get unique with your presentations. You don't have to give too much away, but like, what's one of the crazier things you guys have caught a muskie on or done this year to get a bite?
So we're just trying like totally off the wall stuff. Like I said, so like for our open water game, I'm cutting tails off of medusas and gluing extra tails onto the deuces. I had 5 tails on a deusa.
Brian's nodding his head like, hell yeah.
I'm putting beaver tails on the bottom end of tubes. I'm putting long like Kalin's grubs on just things that shouldn't have anything on, just things like that, and we're finding bites on abstract baits. I think the fish just respond differently, and they always do to some presentations they haven't seen. There's a guy, like I said, the funniest thing we had Tyler Andrews, who you guys listened on the podcast, up in the boat on Leech for a day, and he's sitting there beaming a wax wing, which is like the funniest looking bait, and he's found awesome success on it this year. So it's just throwing things that everyone's not throwing is always going to be to your benefit, at least in Minnesota with the pressure these days.
Yeah, that's why the beaver kind of took off in Minnesota once it got into everybody's boat and it started becoming like the go-to bait.
Yeah. So I mean,
nothing like it.
Yeah, I mean, in my opinion, and I know this is a very opinionated, big out there statement. I think that the beaver bait is at least in Minnesota, is the most innovative and the best bait ever made. And we have hundreds of muskies on them, and they're so versatile. You like in the open, the fish just. I think that the if you get a beaver with a bunch of contrast and whatnot, the fish just they at least in the last 5-10 years they just haven't been able to resist it very much. It's too comparative. Everyone thinks it's like an actual muskrat beaver, whatever, but it looks like a Cisco in the open water with the flash and then in the shadow and the contrast. So I think that those open water fish are susceptible to it. And then in the shallow waters, we fish them weightless a lot and popping them. We can pop them through the reeds, like ultra shallow water, and these fish are eating them, and they're eating them strong. And it's been nothing but success the last 5 years with beavers.
Are you modifying the beaver baits at all? Are you putting blades on the back, taking the tail up, and blade on the back?
All of the sorts? Yep. I'm putting big long paddle tails on the back. I'm putting Kalin's grubs on the back. I'm modifying the beaver in every way. Putting different styles of blades on the back as well. Yep.
So we're heading up to Lake Vermilion in a few days here. This will actually drop after we leave, but we're doing the PMTT up at Lake Vermilion. Sounds like I might need to stop at Thornbros and pick up a few more beavers.
Beavers on Lake Vermilion, they go hand in hand, and I'm not trying to like blow things up or anything by saying things like that, but it's get some. You should have some up there, 100%.
We'll cut this segment out so the competition doesn't get the tips too.
Yeah, maybe we'll talk. Maybe we'll talk offline.
No, it's fine. It's fine. I mean, I love Brian. I'm not trying to like boost the sale. I love Brian, the Beaver owner. He's a great guy, and I'm not trying to like sit here and boost sales and stuff like that. But they're the best bait, hands down. It's not even close in the last 6 years. Not even remotely close.
Now, so hey, look, I'm all for, like, if a bait's great, like, it's not even pumping it. It's like you're just saying what it is, right? Like, it's a good bait. But I think the thing I'm most curious about, and this is probably a little selfish to me because we are going to fish Lake Vermilion, the way we work like pull pause baits in Wisconsin, I feel like is drastically different than how people work them in Minnesota. Because, like, we're fishing, so say like on any given day, whether we're fishing a beaver, tube, Medusa, bulldog, most of what we're doing is like short, quick pops, hopping baits very, very ferociously, either through weeds, through cover, followed by maybe a few sweeps and pauses here and there. But, like, if I'm throwing a mag dog in Wisconsin, there's a good chance that I'm throwing it in, 8 to 7 feet of water with maybe a foot or two at best of clearance. Like, I got to rip that bait through the weeds or hop it over them. Feels like Minnesota is a little bit different. Like, we've heard, you got to slow things down. Is that seemingly accurate to kind of what we've been told?
Yep, I would 100% agree in general. Yeah, I think that it is a little bit more to a day-by-day basis to how they're responding to how you're presenting it. Generally I do some solo fishing, but these days I'm just getting a little bit more like I'd rather just have other people in the boat. So I'll have people present their baits in different manners, just to see how they're responding. But in general, yeah, Minnesota fish, I don't know if it's the way they're, I don't know how. I don't have a scientific explanation to why they respond to slower presented baits, but yeah, in general, just slow drops, slow sweeps with an occasional hot pop or two. That's how we get it done a lot of the time. But then there are certain days and weather patterns that can totally shift that. If we're finding, like, as of late, anyways, if we're finding like a rainy day or fish, kind of pushed into the cabbage, like we still have to rip them out. Hard pumps, rip them out of there. But in general, like, especially if you're fishing the open water, yeah, slowing it down is for whatever reason seems to be the ticket.
I mean, it's going to be a welcome change of pace because we've been just
breaking arms, breaking backs a little bit more over there. Yeah.
Gus and I had the DNR pull up on us. What was it, last weekend? And the first thing the guy said was like, I was getting tired just watching you work that bait. I don't know how the hell you're doing that, because Gus is like a maniac when he works rubber. But Gus, what were you going to say? Sorry.
Oh, I was going to say something, and this could be totally wrong, but I swear somebody told me that Cisco's or whitefish, when they move in the water column, they go vertical. So I don't know if it's because like a beaver or tube, how it goes up and then it drops head first down, and why that works. Whereas in Wisconsin, when we're ripping rubber over weeds, we're primarily fishing fish that eat perch or panfish that just kind of like dart in like side to side and like not as much up and down. So I don't know if that's the difference maybe on why Minnesota fish react to slower presentations that go up and down.
I think so. I mean, that is another thing that you can, sort of learn from the live scope in the open water, is watching the behavior of the Cisco. And they do go vertical, especially when they're feeding, like when they're feeding on bugs on the surface, they're just straight vertical and straight vertical down. And that motion, I've seen muskies eat Cisco's on live scope now in the process of that vertical motion.
Oh, wow.
when the Cisco's are going up to feed. So I think that in itself is part of the reason. Yeah.
Did you kind of have to train yourself? And, you said you started dabbling in the live scope stuff. Like, I know, at least for me, when we have seen fish on live scope, like, I'm very guilty of completely changing what I would typically do. So say if I was just casting, right? I made a cast in open water. We were fishing a bug hatch or maybe off a break. I'm ripping that bait. I'm doing a bunch of crazy shit. I'm, whatever. I don't know there's a muskie underneath it or behind it or anything. But I've noticed that, like, if you do see a muskie on live scope, when we have, like will be like gingerly kind of like, pulling the bait, trying to entice the fish to eat. So like, did you kind of have to teach yourself, like if you saw a fish on live scope, like, okay, just it's regular schedule programming here. We're not changing things up. We're just gonna do what we've been doing. Because I feel like that's been the biggest hurdle for us. Like we just
Yep. Yep. So like trying to, yeah, because it is different when when you see them, and you want to try to stick to the regular program, in my opinion, as much as possible. Like this time of year though, it's so like this time of year, like we're in the middle of August right now. It's like the peak of the end of the warmer months, and majority of our fish now have sort of made that wave to structure. So we're not, I mean, when we're fishing structure, it's really not, I don't have any dependency on I don't even use live
Right.
scope. So
Yep.
I'm not really thinking about it much this time of year, at least out in my area. There are certain lakes, like you might find a lot more fish on Vermilion in the open water still, because for whatever reason their behavior on that lake is just different, and I don't know if it's just overall pressure or what caused it, but the structure movements out there are off track to normal, and it's kind of strange. So I would
So,
I would stick in the open water, or at least give it a good shot out there, even if it's even during this time of year out there. But
so with Vermilion, when you're talking about fish behaviors, I was going to ask this question. Do you find them to be more similar to the Minnesota Bigs or any of the clear waters you fish around Bemidji, or is it closer to Canadian Shield that you fished at, say, Lake of the Woods?
Vermilion to Lake of the Woods.
Yeah, like a comparison, like what is
So
Vermilion
I don't
closer
I
to
don't really get over to
Canadian?
Vermilion very often.
Oh, okay.
So and it's because honestly it's just because there's so much guide pressure, and there's so much going on out there all the time, and I just don't really have much of a desire or need. I have Lake of the Woods at the same distance to my north, where Lake of the Woods, there has been an uptick in pressure up there in recent years, and it's very steadily starting to change some of the fish up there. But for the most part, they're still like Lake of the Woods is the mecca of muskies behaving like muskies should. I love it up there. We're fishing shoreline reef, shoreline rocks. Anything that looks good is still good up there, and we're getting them to come out, eat in the corner of the hang, just like we always dream and want, and that's how it's supposed to be. When we're fishing these deep basin Minnesota lakes where the fish's behavior has been pressured into who knows what on any given day, it just gets kind of like, here we go again, day after day after day, But in Lake of the Woods, I mean, like I said, some of these lakes, like Bemidji, Cass, Leech, these fish are just like, it's just a series of milk runs over and over and over, and it just gets repetitive. So like going to Lake of the Woods, having thousands of spots to choose from, knowing that there's probably a fish on each spot where it's supposed to be at this time of year, ready to chase out a bucktail, that's thrilling to me. It's a lot more thrilling nowadays.
Brian, it sounds like you might need to move to Lake of the Woods. Sounds like
Yeah,
that's kind of right up your alley.
we keep talking about planning a trip into Canada because none of us three have been there, but yeah, it sounds like heaven. So is there like a code to crack with Lake of the Woods, or is it literally like any awesome looking spot is probably going to be awesome?
There are so many muskies in Lake of the Woods. There's not in, I mean, at least I've only been up there a few times now. So in my experience, hasn't been a code to really crack. We're out there every day is an experiment. I mean, we're out there putting on like 100 miles plus a weekend. We're fishing 100, 200 spots, and you'll go out there and you'll find out, you'll drive and you'll be like, oh, like let's go there. Left and right. It's like I don't even know where to start because everything looks good, and it is. We're finding fish all over the place. Every corner of the lake is loaded with muskies. It's a dream place, and I'm not trying to crack it up so much. I know that there's people up there that guide and stuff like, oh, stop sending all these people up here, but it kind of makes me chuckle at the same time. When someone up on Lake of the Woods says, "Oh, there's so much pressure on these million acres," it's like,
yeah, okay. Yeah.
Okay,
I mean,
there.
I'll not, it's not easy for everybody to take off of work and away from
Right.
family and friends or whatever to get all the way up to Lake of the Woods side. I mean, I think people are pretty well aware there's a lot of muskies in Canada.
Right. Yeah. I would recommend a trip if you haven't. It's beautiful. It's gorgeous. If the air is different, everything feels different. It's just, it's amazing. It's an
Have
amazing place.
Have you fished anywhere else in Canada other than Lake of the Woods?
Um, no, I haven't. I haven't. I'd like to get to Eagle. I'd like to get out to, Rowan and Lac Seul and such, but those are all on the list. I'm gonna be going north a lot more over the next couple of years. Muskie fishing is gonna kind of be taking a back seat over the next few years for family life. Hopefully raising a child or two and doing a lot more traveling across the states and beyond and things like that. But for when I do get out muskie fishing, I am going to be like trying to do some very cool, neat related trips.
Sounds like you
Yeah.
need to book a trip to Vilas County. Get up to northern Wisconsin, get on a big
Yeah.
old Wisconsin greenie.
Yeah, I do. I do. I've got friends out there all the time. They're like, "Ah, come on out, come on out, come on out." So we're working on a trip next year out there as well. So
There is part of that, I think, in northern Wisconsin, that there are certain areas that I do still think hold on to kind of what you're talking about, where the air is a little different. There's nobody out there. I mean, there definitely is lakes in Wisconsin in the northern zone that are very pressured. Everybody knows about them. But just because of the sheer density of amount of lakes, there are so many where Gus and I and Brian and all three of us are out there. We're the only boat on the water for 6, 7 straight hours. We don't see another muskie fisherman. I mean, it still exists. It still exists.
yeah, and that's one thing also that I'll bring into the table here and saying, and something that we're doing that's maybe a little bit different than other people is that we're getting really experimental with locating unpressured muskies. I mean, we're going up chains, we're going through rivers, up into lakes that are just completely unmapped, unmarked, considered non-musky lakes, and we're finding fish in these lakes, and they're eating baits like they've never seen one before, and it's something that we've been doing the last few years and having a lot of fun with it. To me, that's nowadays, like, I've caught a lot of muskies, been around the whole state, been around all over the place, and the most exciting thing to me nowadays is going and breaking down a brand new water and finding fish where they're not supposed to be. I love that feeling.
Yeah,
So, and muskies do. They travel, like, people don't realize it's if there is any lake in Wisconsin or anywhere across the Midwest that has muskies, if it connects to another lake in any way, shape, or form, there's going to be muskies in that connecting lake. There are, and that's just how it is.
Yeah. No, agreed.
So changing topics a little bit, but sticking with Minnesota waters, I see that you do a lot of night fishing, and that is something that has piqued our interest. I don't know if we just haven't become nocturnal enough to try it a lot, or the bugs just get to us and we just don't stick it out or something, or probably the confidence piece where we do it for a while, don't get anything. Obviously, you don't get any visual follows. You can sometimes see them on side image if they come in late or something like that. But you do that on pressure waters because you think, or I guess clearer waters because you just think that they're harder to get during the day, or you see too many people out there. And then at night, all right, sorry, I'm saying too much, but my biggest question is that at night, do you do anything different than during the day? Like, are you finding them in the same spots?
Yeah. So I think it's all of the above a little bit. Night fishing. So muskies are really, especially on like very, like in northern Minnesota, we've got very clear lakes. The lakes are for the most part very clear, and that makes a bite during the day just by default a little bit more difficult. Like when they can't visually break down what's going on at night, it just makes them more susceptible to eating. It just does. And on top of that, I think that, yeah, just the whole pressure thing in general has kind of forced them on some lakes to be more just nocturnal feeders. That's just how it is. It's I'm not a huge fan of going out there and chugging in late into the night, but there's just certain times of the year and certain places where that's what you have to do is, in terms of finding them in the same spot. Like if you're going out there and you're marking them there during the day, yeah, they should still be there at night, and they'll be more apt to come out and eat, I think. It's in the summertime now. This is like the prime time of the year where we're doing like a majority of our fishing is at night. Part of that being the water temperatures, like they are pretty warm during the day. I mean, luckily in northern Minnesota, we don't really ever have to worry about that modern 80-degree threshold. It doesn't really get up that high ever, but it can push it sometimes. And night fishing, it generally cools several degrees and just makes it a safer bet to target them. But also each night in the summer, you've got your structure fish they're there majority of the day. But each night, a lot of these open water, the fish that are still in open water, they do make a nightly push to feed on perch and whatnot on the structure, which is kind of backwards, I guess. You think that they would just be feeding on Cisco all the time, but they, for whatever reason, this time of year, each night fish do push in and set up on the edge of these break lines and cabbage beds, and it's the prime time to fish and catch. I don't have all the explanations in the world. I think that if you're looking to find more success night fishing, just do it around full and new moons. It has a drastic effect in Minnesota. I find that it's less of the case on Lake of the Woods and dirty water lakes. I don't think that moons play as big of a factor. But these deep basin clear lakes, full moons, new moons, for we have just much heavier success around those periods, and we're not fishing any more than we are any other day. But the moon plays a big effect on the Clear Lake Basin Minnesota fish.
Yeah, well, we got new moon coming up here in a few days. Great.
Yeah, we're pretty excited for that. I have Brian, you remember this. This is when you caught that really big one at sunset on the topwater. So for there, we tried night fishing that night after he caught that really big fish. That was maybe 30 minutes after sunset. So it was still bright out, but it wasn't night yet. And we didn't find any success at night, but during the day we found fish on outer weed edges. Then Brian caught that one at sunset in basically slop, like the like way shallower than before. We couldn't even get bucktails through there. You could only get a topwater through there. Do you think, in your opinion, that big fish was there all day, or did it slide up when that sun went down and it felt like it was good to go in that shallower water and it didn't feel as vulnerable? Because sometimes
it was also a little bit of a cold front after that storm too, so maybe that could have pressured them up.
So there was steam on the water, so it started to like cool down a little bit quicker that night than normal. But sometimes I think like big fish, we see them come out of the slop a lot, but like I feel like a big fish is vulnerable when it's really, really sunny to be sitting in 3-4 feet of water.
That's a great question. We have a few lakes, and we discovered this, in a way this year, but my guess would be that fish was there all day. And there's a few lakes in my area that we fish that the fish will do that even on just hot, scorching days. They will go bury themselves in that slop, and you can scan, you can scope, you can do everything under the sun to try to see those fish, and you won't see them. And then at the right time, they'll just kind of rise up and put themselves in a feeding position, and that's just how it is. Because there are certain lakes that we fish where, like I said, they're really easy to break down. There's not a whole lot of fish in the open water, and if we're not marking them out in the open water or on the break lines, and there's really nowhere else for them to be, than hiding way up in the slop. And we had similar experiences where they just don't show themselves during the day, and then that first dark period start flying out of nowhere, out of the ultra shallow water. So it's kind of strange, but yeah, I would guess that fish was probably there.
Have you night fished at all going into like October and before turnover when these fish are still in shallow? At least that's how they are in Wisconsin. But have you night fished late into the year?
Year round night fishing in Minnesota. It's it works all the time. I mean, that is not, if anything, it's more successful overall than day fishing, just due to the clarity of the water and the skiddiness of the pressured fish we have these days. And we catch a lot of fish, yeah, late into the night. I mean, like I said, I work full-time career. We don't get too many days where we go out and really pound it out overnight, but we would find in general, if you fished from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m., you'd find maybe twice as much success as you would from fishing 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. each day.
So I guess we're ways out from this, but post turnover at night, I mean, what are the Muskies doing? Because in my eyes, they're, it's cold, they're kind of sleeping, they're snoozing around, and are they moving up into break if they're off it, or what have you noticed?
Yeah. Well, so on our lakes, fish have become really, really transient these days. Like they're coming in and out a lot more than they used to. It used to be the case where they would just lay there, right kind of on the outside of the breaks or whatever. And there's nothing you can do to get that fish to eat or move. It's just how it is. And then at night, as it gets colder, the feeding windows get smaller and tighter, and you just have to be there at the right place at the right time, and that's the only chance you'll get. Nowadays, though, I feel like the fish are moving in and out of the open water to even up to like ultra shallow water, 2, 3, 4 feet, really fast. And when we get, especially as it gets later and after turnover, when we're fishing like the structure, like, that gets to be the time of the year when the Cisco's start staging, and the Muskies really will move up before the Cisco's and just wait for that Cisco spawn. But the windows are really tight, but if you're there at the right time, and that's really all it is. I mean, they're coming in and out a lot more nowadays, so it's tough to really break it down like we used to be able to. We're getting a lot more fish that time of year, like on castbacks. Like, we're driving the break with side imaging, and we're marking them. Like, I'll see them come in on my side imaging from open water, and we're getting more fish on those castbacks these days. But yeah, it's tough. It's tough to say. Their behaviors just change. It changes every year, and they get stranger and stranger. And unless you're out there often, kind of keeping track of what's going on, it gets to be really difficult for anyone just coming up there and fishing.
I do remember last fall, Dad and I were trolling on a lake that froze the next day, so it was really, really late into the season, and we were trolling, and I think that was our last day of fishing last year. We went 3 for 4 on trolling. So we had a really successful outing. We caught all of them directly on the break line and pretty, deep water. I think it was, well, I'm saying deep, but it was like 15 to 18 feet of water, like just steep break line. And then as we were getting to sunset, I was side imaging fish just shallower and shallower and like I would do passes on the same shoreline. All of a sudden they're in 12, then they're in 10, and all of a sudden they're in 8. And then like before you know it, like they probably went up into the dead weeds potentially,
Yep.
But I don't even know if we had our casting rods with us. It was freezing. It would have been difficult, but yeah, it's just crazy to see that happen like right in front of my eyes.
It is cool. And that's pretty typical behavior these days, especially even on the freezing months. Like they'll move up ultra, like there gets to be a point where it's too cold for them to move up like ultra shallow, but we're finding some fish in very shallow water in November. Like it's strange. I have no explanation for it. It's kind of like this June, like I said, like end of June, we should be seeing fish transitioning from spawning to open water, but we're finding them coming in to the reeds. Like it's just some unexplainable stuff the last couple of years at certain times. But the general behavior would be, yeah, I mean, they're just moving up at sunset, and then some of the fish are feeding and moving out. I don't know, we just it's a constant flow both directions, and establishing like a firm set pattern on these big basin Minnesota lakes nowadays is harder. It's just not as consistent. Things change by the day.
That's what's great about muskie fishing. Even if there's a book on it, there's going to be ways that it's wrong.
Yep.
There's
Oh yeah.
never hard, fast rules. And so going with like seasonal patterns, I did want to go into this because it is August and we're talking days are getting shorter. We're about to get some cool downs. And I know in Minnesota, it's the classic push up onto sand, onto some reeds, like really shallow water. What what's the criteria for you to say the next morning you go out fishing? All right, we're going to go hammer 2 to 4 feet. They're going to be up in the sand in the reeds. Like that's where they're going to be.
Yeah, I think that generally big overnight temp drops and big swings in temperatures just makes them instantly react like that. There are not, like usually around early September or end of August or something is, it's like a total wave of fish that moves way up, and it can happen overnight. We've seen it happen literally overnight to where we'll be fishing the shoreline structure one full day, and then the next day there's 40 fish up there, and it just happens very fast. And I just keep an eye out for that. It usually happens on a huge temp swing. We get that massive, whether it be a storm cold front or just that time of year where we're dropping from a 70-degree day to a 40-degree night. You guys know those, and that's enough. That's enough to start it. And then you just need that consistency to sort of keep them up there. Because if they'll push up there overnight, and after that big cool down, and then if it heats back up during that day, they're jetting right back out right the next day. So, the early morning hours is definitely where you're going to find a lot more success on that sand bite. In my opinion, at least until the weather gets like consistently cool. I like temperatures under 60, or around 60 and not any higher, for that to really start to kick off. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So once that starts to you're getting like daytime temps in the low 60s, upper 50s, like things are going to start happening way up there.
So I guess my question then, to transition a bit, what's keeping you from being, you said you don't want to lose kind of the love or passion of muskie fishing, but what are you doing on your 9 to 5 during the week? Like, are you working a pretty traditional job where you're kind of getting out after work and then weekends, or how does that set up for you?
Yep. I have my normal career, which is I do sales for a manufacturing company, but the people I work with are just awesome. Like I love my job. I love the people I work with. It's, it's work is work. But I don't mind it. It's nothing that I hate getting up for every day. So that's enough for me to put the brakes on. Okay, I'm going to be a full-time muskie guide. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah. So then I get out on the evenings after work if I so choose. And then kind of weekend warrioring, I guess, a little bit, but most weeknights I try to get out if I can.
Well, I would say, and I don't know if I don't want to classify you wrong, but I would say that you're more than a weekend warrior. You're somebody that I've followed on Instagram for quite some time. Like you've, done, I feel like a really good job at kind of documenting your fishing experiences. And I don't want to, I guess, get into it too much. And I guess we can, if you want to, but putting all that stuff out on social media, has that been something that's you felt overall generally a positive thing that you've kind of done? You've got a lot of followers. People are kind of, obviously interested in what you're doing. So
yeah, social media, it's like you guys, I'm sure, have found out or know, it's such a pros and cons thing. There's everyone's got an opinion on everything these days. And there's a lot of people out there, especially in the muskie community, in quotes, that they hate each other for this reason, or hate each other because of that reason, or don't, or just over certain things over certain opinions. Even it's just I'm kind of over that stuff in general. It's just it's just draining,
yeah.
The life of the internet. I hate the internet. I really just overall I hate it. I hate its existence. And I wish that things could just go back to meeting muskie guys at the local Muskies Inc. meetings and only, and swapping stories at the table. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
that was the life. Nothing we'll never get that back. You know, like 15 years ago, the glory days. We always talk about the glory days because it was the glory days. It just was.
Yeah.
But yeah, overall, like I've met a lot of my best friends on social media. My current boat partner, I mean, guys in my wedding, like the positives have been amazing. You know, all the people I've gotten to meet, talk to, go fishing with, you know, it's amazing. I mean, that's the greatest positive that you can get out of social media is getting the opportunity to share the boat with somebody new, and hopefully developing some sort of friendship. You know, and that's all I really am trying to do these days is just meeting more people, fishing with more people, and uh, gaining friendships in the sport that we all have the same passion for is really should be the only goal at the end of the day. I mean, we're all out muskie fishing. You know, I may disagree with the way certain people target fish or certain things people do, but at the same, I don't have anything personal against. I'll share the boat with anyone that exists, and even if I've had like a strong disagreement with somebody in the past, you're welcome to come out fishing and we can BS through it, talk about it, laugh. Things are different in the real world when you're out fishing with somebody
Yeah.
versus all the crap and comments and everything else that goes on the internet. You know,
Couldn't agree more.
you don't really get to understand people, their true nature, their everything about that person until you go fish with them. You know, everyone has opinions about everyone on the internet. Nobody cares about that crap. Go fishing with these people, get to meet new people, go to gatherings, have fun, and just do that. And that's all that really matters. So I
Yeah,
can't
I
stress
think
that enough. Like it's all the online crap. I'm trying to like very, very limit my time on the internet these days, and it's only going to continue to decline. So
I don't blame you there. And I know we're using the internet to, just help, I don't know,
like
promote
this
the
right here is
podcast.
awesome.
And
This is a
I
conversation. You know what I mean?
I love this. Yeah. And
This
that's
is
why
real.
I was just about to say, like, I think that's why another, maybe the biggest aspect that Max and I have really enjoyed from the PMTT circuit is that we've met some awesome people from just sitting at the table, like you're saying, and talking muskies. It's what it felt like. Nobody's on their phone or anything like that. And then we're in, muskie leagues up here in northern Wisconsin. I just go fish with my dad on Monday night, and on Tuesday night go fish with my buddy Clayton. We just shoot the shit, cast, maybe catch one, maybe catch two, I don't know, and then go to the bar afterwards, talk about what you didn't or did see, and yeah, go from there. And then another, going off of the positives, saying that you met, the guy that you fish with a lot, or other guys that you've met to fish with, is that we have as well, like our muskie bender weekend, our buddy Parker that came along, I would have never met him unless social media. Just this past week, I kind of had a little more time off to do some personal fishing, and I ended up going out with two Muskies on Tap podcast listeners, guys that I've never met, but I was messaging with on social media and had a great time fishing with them and got to meet two more guys, just it's awesome. I love
It
that
is,
part of
and
it for
that's
sure.
100%. That's what it's about. That is the definition of what it's about, and the meaning behind the entire muskie community. You know, it is, and there's nothing better than that. You know, having a beer with the guys after a day of fishing, talking about fish stories. You know, that's why I'm like most of the time like social media related or like doing seminars and all this sort of stuff, you know, on the internet. Like I kind of shy away from that, but I like podcast. This is like real conversation with people, you know, in person. You know, I love this stuff. Like
Well, it's fun. I mean, it's fun because like, I've touched on this in the past, but it's like people that really truly love muskie fishing, like everyone has a common denominator, and that's that they're in some way, shape, or form, they're all sick in the head. Because like what you're doing, I mean, like if you had explained it to somebody from like Georgia or wherever, pick a state that doesn't have muskies or people don't muskie fish. And like I have buddies even here in the cities. It's like, so you're telling me that you spend 10 to 14 hours on the water and a great day is you see a few and you catch a really nice fish. It's like, yeah, that is a great day to us. And that's like, that is not everybody shares that same thing. So like when you find other people that, you know, align with those same kind of like ideas of what a great day of fishing is, like, yeah, that's what makes those conversations awesome, because you know that they're just as sick in the head as you are. Like they love it, you know, and that's half the reason why we wanted to start this thing was like, man, we just love shooting the shit about muskie fishing, and we want to talk to other people that also share that same passion, and that's what makes this fun. You know, that's what makes it cool.
100%. It takes a lot of a little bit of, or a lot of crazy and a lot of mental resolve. I mean, the reason we love muskies is first, it's just it's the challenge, it's the drive, and it's just the reward after if you find success. I mean, it's so much different than every other species of fish, in my opinion, you know, and that's why it is what it's hard. That's a tough conversation to have with somebody who's coming up, you know, like you said, coming up from the south on a guide trip, and they just think they're gonna, you know, it's like people get false ideas off social media sometimes, like, oh, you're gonna go out there, we're gonna catch 8 muskies today. Like, no, you might see one or two, and
Yeah.
if we're really good, you'll catch one. You know what I mean? Like, it's a tough conversation to have with somebody who doesn't understand it, but yeah, the reason for all of us is the same, and I love it. You know, I always have. And you said 20 years of muskie fishing, and it's like, you know, a lot has changed in, you know, overall with the fish themselves, and like, but at the end of the day, like, my reaction of putting a bigger fish in the bag is no different than it was 20 years ago. Thrill, excited, you know, smiles, happiness, you know. Like if you ever find yourself just like, oh, you got a big fish, you know, and at that point you might want to just like take a step back, take a break, you know, take a few months off, something, I don't know, but every fish that gets caught and gets us out of nowhere, and especially, you know, the unexpected, it's just, I don't think that feeling will ever get old. I don't know.
It'd be hard to think it would. That's
Yeah.
for sure. I mean, it's the best. There's no doubt about it. So I got to shout out the guru, because he's the one who initially gave me the push to reach out to you. So you guys were able to link up and get in the boat together. I'm sure that's also probably a product of a little bit of social media, I'd assume.
Yep.
Is that how that relationship started?
100%. Yeah. So I have a buddy, a Wisconsin buddy, who started what we call the Muskie Battle.
Oh yeah.
And I don't know if you guys have heard of it or gone over it at all or anything like that. So
Watch the videos, seen the YouTube videos.
Yeah, it sort of changed. So it started back in the day as like a just kind of a competition between like people who had YouTube channels, and then since then, so many things have changed, and like a lot of people are coming for the wrong reasons, and like just, I don't know. It's a long. There's another 2 hours worth of talking, but right now we've sort of kind of developed it into almost like a fantasy league now. And each year we get together in the same 4 or 5 days. New people are welcome every year. We do it through Instagram. So like there's all this up, you don't have to have one, but it makes it a lot easier with the process, and we can add you into the group, and we have full blown conversations about all sorts of muskie related things every day almost. And it's a get together. We fish for a trophy. And a lot of BSing, hanging out. It's the most fun thing I've ever done. And
cool.
Last year we invited the guru and a few other new guys, and they came and we all hit it off, and just, it's awesome people all the way around. And if you guys were ever interested in that, I could give you some more info on the side and stuff. And it's so fun. I can't even put it into words. So many people get together, and a lot of BSing, and a lot of.
Are you guys on the same like lake or lake group every year? Or do you guys mix it up?
No, we generally make this year we generally mix it up. So a lot of times it's a different state each year. We're doing it up in northern Minnesota in my area again, for the second time in a row though, because it just went so smooth and so fun last year that we decided to run it back. So but yeah, generally we're always picking a new area, new place each year to try to host this. It's always hard trying to put together an event like this to get everyone together,
Right.
especially with everyone's adult schedules these days. But
Mhm.
Have you guys hosted one up in Canada yet?
no, but I'm talking about that next year. I mean, next year we might be doing like a Lake of the Woods or somewhere in Canada, where we do it. I'm
Cool.
really leaning into that probably.
Yeah.
But it's a blast. And anyway, yeah, that's where I met Guru. And this year he came up fish with me and Tyler just a few weeks ago and had a blast. Had a blast for a day. So
That sounds like a lot of fun. Yeah. Anytime you can, shoot the shit with other people and add a little competition to it, that always makes things fun. Get a big shiny trophy at the end of it. And
yeah. I mean, it's like I said, it's like fantasy league BSing. We're like,
yeah,
that's just all it is. We're just out for fun, and everyone loves the chance to travel. I love traveling too. So
cool. All right. Well, man, we really can't thank you enough for coming on tonight. I had a blast. I'm sure Gus and Brian did as well. It was cool. Thank you for taking us to school on some Minnesota muskie fishing that we, were really not very knowledgeable on before, but I feel like now I could maybe go out and at least see a fish in Minnesota. Well, Gus and I are really hoping that's the case here in a few days since we're going to Vermilion for the PMTT.
Yeah.
So yeah, can't thank you enough, man. This was a blast and hope to have you on again in the future.
of course, yeah, I appreciate you guys having me on here. This podcast should only take off in the future. The stuff you guys are putting out is really fun, really natural, and it's awesome. So
Cool. Thanks, Alex. Appreciate it.
thank you guys.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, Alex.
All right, guys. Hopefully that was a wealth of knowledge for everybody. I know it was for us. We got to thank Alex again for coming on. Been following him for a long time on Instagram. Dude just catches fish, and he's been doing it for a long time and really knows his stuff. So that was an awesome opportunity. We're very grateful that he made some time out for us schmucks, us Wisconsin schmucks, talk about some big Minnesota fish. That was a blast. So Gus, I'm going to turn it over to you here to do some PMTT talk. Let's fire it up.
All right. It is Sunday currently in the podcast that we are recording. It's going to come out Thursday. And Max and I are heading up Tuesday morning.
Where you heading?
We'll be heading to Vermilion, the world famous Lake Vermilion. Thanks for that, guys. That's getting me stoked. We're looking forward to hopefully tangling with one of those big old ghost fish that are just out there. Everyone knows they're out there, but not many people catch them. And yeah, I don't know. I don't know about you, Max, but being on water that has the chance to kick out some of the probably, maybe fattest, but probably longest fish almost in the world. Just like being there with your bait in the water is almost like it's ominous because they're ghost-like fish.
Yeah, I'm a little nervous, a little excited, very excited. This one's been circled on the calendar since I think we saw the trail sites come out. I know we hustled and bought a Lake Vermilion map, put it on the table. We were circling and mapping out spots back in, I don't know, before we left for Mexico back in like February. So we've been trying to do our homework. I don't know how much of it'll actually pan out and do us right, but yeah, we're pretty fired up.
Underdog story, backs against the wall. Nobody expects much from you, but here they come.
I mean, yeah, I guess I don't know. We've found ourselves somehow in pole position in this PMTT thing, so I think we're
as if the guys in the pole are ever the underdog.
Trying our damnedest to stay there, but we'll see. We'll see how it shakes out.
Yeah, I think in advance to going to Vermilion, one thing that I did, and I was sending you guys some Snapchats, is I built some pretty large bucktails that have not really seen, I don't know many people that throw them in northern Wisconsin. I had to throw them obviously before leaving to test them out. And I want to use them more in Wisconsin, because they look good. I mean, they're putting out
What'd you
a
build, like a
lot of
16-14 blade combo?
oh yeah, oh my
22
God, I'm
20.
doing 18-20. Yeah, this is
The boat
insane.
propellers.
I got like a 3.1, illegal Japanese gear ratio reel ready to roll to just
Yeah.
get
Cut
these
this, cut
things
this,
in
cut this.
because it's gonna be.
Yeah. No, it's gonna be fun. Where are you at right now mentally, Gus? It's Sunday night. We leave Tuesday morning. I mean, I'm pretty much just gonna be killing time here until I hit the road. I feel like I'm
Max, you'll probably get a few lab receipts in, make sure the body's in tip top shape for this. It's
you
gonna be a
know,
grind.
Brian, I appreciate you bringing that up because yeah, me and the lab, we took a little bit of hiatus
Jeez.
midsummer. I've been trying to get that weight up, just throwing big rubber, but yeah, did a few workouts this week, getting the body tip top shape. We're feeling good. We're feeling fresh. So at this point, it's just be getting in a lot of sleep probably over these next few nights because I'm assuming that Gus and I will be limited on that. Come Tuesday, we're going to be spending a lot of time on the water, a lot of time with some buddies, probably some late nights, some early mornings. So that's it's all part of it though. That's what makes it fun.
Yeah, well, I'm looking forward to all that, but where my head's at, honestly, you've been chatting, texting, you, Max and Brian about like Vermilion coming up, and it's just like I'm like, yeah, I know what's coming up, and I've been on the water and stuff, but all of a sudden now it's hitting me now that we're actually talking about it. That we got Alex on to talk Minnesota Muskies, and then it's just like,
It's
holy
here.
crap, we're gonna be fishing for these fish in just a couple days, you know. So
Well, I think too, I want to ask you like where you're at because I mean, maybe you had bigger aspirations than I did. I think at the beginning of the PMTT, our goal was to make the tournament, make the championship, I should say. I did not expect us to be kind of sitting where we are right now. So I don't know. I don't think it changes
mm-mm.
anything. We're not going to go into it trying to fish conservatively or anything. I think we're just going to keep
No, we're
doing
gonna
what
get
we're doing
aggressive.
and just keep trying to
No,
do what we've been
Keep
doing.
going after pins.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's what it's all about. I mean, I think we're just going to keep trying to kind of keep our same philosophies that we've been doing in tournaments 1 and 2 and just kind of see how it all shakes out for us. But yeah, I'm definitely a little I'm probably the more nervous going into this one than I was into Madison. I think more or less just because of the body of water we're fishing more than anything. It's just so different than what we're normally used to. So I think that's probably what's got me a little bit more nervous.
I think the butterflies are gonna set in on Friday morning, since this tournament is actually a Friday Saturday instead of a Saturday Sunday. It's just hard to say, you know. Back in Kentucky during that PMTT, I didn't feel like I really had that many nerves going into it, and even the first morning, because I was just so not expecting anything and going off of nothing and just going there to hang out with the guys that I was staying with and just like be able to fish in April. But then when that first fish I had on, I was like, I was the most nervous ever for like any fish almost in my entire life so far. And especially that second one, maybe even more. So I'm like, oh my God, this works or something. And then I gotta, net it myself. And then obviously there was insane nerves going on at Madison, but now there's just like the nerves and maybe just like the little bit of back pressure knowing where we're sitting. So I want to like clear my head, clear that out, kind of like get that in the back of the mind, and we're just going there to like fish, have fun, hang out, and just
Yeah.
musky fish, simple as that.
Well, I think like the first two legs of the PMTT, we were pretty fortunate, like you in Kentucky and then us in Madison, to get a fish on the board pretty early on that first day. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's going to be something, for us. I think we just got to know that we're on big fish water. And yes, there are a lot of fish, but at the end of the day, like that moment can happen at any single time in place, throughout the tournament hours. And if things don't start as hot as they were, in Kentucky and in Madison, that just got to stick to it. I mean, we saw it in Madison with the, Lajewski and his partner who ended up winning. They won the tournament in an hour span on the last
Mm-hmm.
day.
Yep.
So just kind of mentally having that like mental resolve over that 15 hours coming off of a handful of days of pre-fishing. It's just, I think that's going to be the biggest thing. It's just like sticking with it and staying in the moment.
Yep. I think fishing, I mean, we already do it, but we fish hard and we don't take too many breaks. I mean, I know we did in Madison for that little bit when it was scorching hot, but I don't know what we're exactly getting. Every time I look at the weather for Vermilion, it's so up and down. Like I can't tell if we're gonna get rain or not. I can't tell like how big the winds are gonna be. I hope we don't get. The biggest thing is, on tournament day, we do what we can, but on pre-fishing, if it is really bad winds and dangerous, I know it can even be dangerous for people with 22-foot fiberglass, but with us with an 18.5-foot aluminum tiller boat, if we lose time pre-fishing, that's maybe where I'm the most nervous about. But I gotta think past that and just think that with any of the little pointers that we've got from people, all of the heavy research we've done as much as we can with this lake, just because nobody just gives out, like this is where fish is right this moment. Like you got to go out there and find them yourself. Even if people have said like fish are in the spot, you don't just go to that spot and expect there's going to be a fish right there. So we just gotta, I don't know. I don't know where I was going with that, but we're just going to fish hard and pre-fish and have fun.
Brian, you got any words of wisdom for us?
I don't know about words of wisdom. I'm hoping you guys have good cell service, and then you can put me on FaceTime if that's legal, and prop me up on the trolling motor, and I can kind of point you where to cast. But
Yeah.
it might be too much of an upper hand. Could be cheating. Who knows?
That's true. They could
I mean,
find
yeah,
that out.
that's true. Having Brian's eyes during
I'm
the
basically a
tournament.
live scope on the front of the boat. Good thing you guys already have 3 or 4 units running, but
Right. Yeah, Brian will be up there on Facebook or not Face, sorry. Brian will be up there on FaceTime being like, yo, what's that rock over there doing?
That
tree.
Go
hanging
catch a
tree.
fish. Is that a dock? Why is that dock right there?
Just got the text from Vegas. Caesars Sportsbook just came out with the new odds for you guys this weekend. They have set the bar high, being the pole team here. They've got you at 2 fish, no hook, 2 fish straight up, and inch-wise biggest fish, 44.5.
I hate this game because we lose every time.
Yeah.
I'll hammer the over.
I told people to
Oh.
bet, told people to sell their house
I've run into people at the bar, yeah, who've called me out for ruining their financial livelihood for telling them to bet the house on it, and
during
this
the PMCC when we blanked.
yeah. Unload it all. We're taking first and didn't catch a fish.
Yeah, that was humbling.
I think Caesars had a good line here though. 2 fish, you got to hope to get one early. And obviously there's giant fish in Minnesota, specifically Lake Vermilion where you will be. 44.5 I think is a good line. I feel like from just the social media buzz, there's just as many 40 inchers as there are 50 inchers, it seems sometimes. So
We'll find
hopefully,
that out.
hopefully you can at least get a 40.
Yeah. Well, we'll be keeping everyone up to date on the Muskies on Tap Instagram and posting some updates and whatnot while we can, especially during pre-fishing. So should be fun.
Thanks for the odds there, Brian. I don't really know what to tell the people to bet on, but yeah, definitely don't like that. Typically we've been wrong. So I'm going to shut up on that. Just see what happens. And yeah, like Max said, we're gonna be keeping people updated on just like what we're no, not literally what we're doing, but just like, the trip on the Muskies on Tap Instagram page. So be sure to check that out if you haven't. And kind of segueing from that, Max started a new segment called the Common Man Muskie segment. That's what this segment is. So, Max, what do you got from the first week of doing that?
Yeah, I'm excited about it. It's, for people like Brian and I who are guides and want some, maybe a little bit more exposure or
Well,
the ability to kind of,
showcase.
showcase their awesome catches and kind of, talk some stories of big fish catches and whatnot. And again, it doesn't have to be a big fish or anything. It's just always cool to hear from the listeners and what they're catching. So we had our first submission to the Common Man Muskie segment. So shout out to our guy Jason Farrell
Shout out Jason.
out of West Virginia.
Shout out Jason.
He caught a 54-inch behemoth down in West Virginia.
Gotta be fake.
No, he's got the pictures. It's a gorgeous river fish. Caught it on a 13-inch Susie sucker, Brian, your favorite bait.
Jeez. That's crazy. Yeah, that's what I would have guessed he caught it on. Thing is automatic. Didn't know they had him out there in West Virginia, but he found the secret sauce. So caps off to Jason.
Yeah, the picture's awesome. I'll put it up on our Instagram. But yeah, just a behemoth of a fish. Really awesome stuff. And appreciate you sending that in. So hopefully over the next few weeks here, we can get some more submissions and kind of keep this segment going. It'll probably die if nobody sends in fish pictures. So this is a little encouragement, a little nudge.
The only requirement we have when you send in your pictures, you have to tell us the lake, the spot, and the bait that was used.
Disregard that. No, just shoot us it on our Muskies on Tap Instagram DM, or feel free to send me a text at 920. Sorry, I got really bad case of the hiccups right now.
All sorts of noises over there.
Shoot us a DM on Muskies on Tap Instagram, or just shoot me a text on my cell 920. I can't.
He can't do
I keep trying to hiccup, dude. I can't do it.
Just hiccup and pause. Like if you
shoot me a text
just...
on my cell at 920-205-9192.
There you go.
Good luck editing that.
That'll be a fun one to edit. Max has got the
just
hiccup.
roll it straight through.
We might roll it straight through. I don't know yet, but Max got the hiccup, so he said his phone number like 10 times.
We're doing it live. Fuck it, we're doing it live.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's the Common Man Muskie segment. I would appreciate if people sent in pictures, fish stories, all that good stuff. Keep this thing rolling on. I think it could be kind of a fun thing to do. So yeah. Again, thanks to Jason, one of the listeners, for sending it in. Appreciate it.
And we do have a merch update.
Oh Brian, what is going on? Merch God, what is happening?
Yeah, Merch God took kind of a back seat here. And we had a little help getting the push, getting the order sent in, and I think it's all set in stone now. Probably gonna be a few weeks before we get them out and running to everybody. But yeah, I think we'll try and do a giveaway at some point once we get the order in, and then the rest of them will be up for sale for first come, first serve on the limited sizes. So stay tuned.
One of the big things too, I wanted to touch on this, Brian, and not trying to obviously we're pushing the merch. We'd be idiots not to. We want people repping the Muskies on Tap logo. It'd be awesome to have people, rocking it. And but the biggest thing I think we're trying to focus on, Gus and Gus went down and actually checked out kind of the actual t-shirts and sweatshirts that we're getting. So we wanted to make sure that the stuff was good quality that you can either fish in or hang out in. And I think we actually found some good stuff. We did some research. We kind of went through, we did a trial run with some sweatshirts and it turned out really awesome. I think we just want to make sure that we're offering, really good stuff that's going to last a long time and that people are actually going to really like. So seems like we got it all dialed in, and yeah, we'll be up and running on that in a few weeks, and excited to see how that goes.
Yeah, I'm pumped for those to roll in. As always, more feedback, the better. Just DM Muskies on Tap at Instagram if you're excited for the merch drop. We just kind of like to know, who's maybe looking into getting some sweatshirts or t-shirts. That's kind of what we're looking at doing first. Potentially some stickers, but we'll just send those in with the sweatshirts and t-shirts. So that's all awesome stuff that we're looking forward to here at Muskies on Tap. I don't think is there anything else to add, guys, for the night?
I think that's a wrap.
Yeah, that was a really fun episode. Again, can't appreciate Alex enough for coming on and shooting the shit with us. And yeah, it was good to get fired up about this PMTT, man. I'm excited. I'm just ready at this point, ready to get there, just get fishing.
Oh yeah, me too. So with that being said, with all this energy going on, and we finally have Brian back on the podcast this week, can you please give us a good send off here, Brian, going into Lake Vermilion?
Woo. Guys, it's been a while since I've had to give an outro, but I really can't contain my excitement for you guys heading over to Minnesota, foreign land for Gus, homeland for Max. Hopefully you guys have some beginner's luck over there. I know we
speed it up.
We fished there once. We fished there once, didn't have any luck. But now it all changes, guys. Watch out for these guys in pre-fishing. Do not go near their boat. Don't watch what they're doing. They got tactics that haven't been discovered in Minnesota. So everybody out there fishing this weekend, good luck. Not too much good luck. Muskie on Tap gang, gonna hold it down there in Lake Vermilion. You already know what it is. Good luck, everybody, this weekend.